Hey everybody, this is Greg Petix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the Petixonian Institute of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Wildstorm Spotlight, #1, featuring Majestic. Majestic was the Wildstorm universe's doppelganger of Superman. A lot of comic companies have their own Superman. This was Wildstorm's. And, but more importantly than that, no one really cares about the character Majestic. But this issue, Alan Moore writes it. This is the period in the mid to late 90s when Alan Moore was whoring himself out to Image Comics. He needed money. I think he wanted to buy a house or something. And he was just doing lots of random stuff for Image, like Spawn versus Violator, and Badrock versus Violator, and Spawn versus Badrock, I can't remember. But a lot of goofy stuff. Not up to his normal standard. You could tell he was kind of dashing it off. But still, even Alan Moore dashing shit off is better than most superhero comics, you know. So it was pretty good stuff. Just wasn't up to Alan Moore's snuff. And, but this comic is really great. It reminds me of his classic DC comics in the 80s when Alan Moore could do no wrong. You know, of course, he was doing stuff like The Watchmen, but also, like, every now and then he would just get, like, a little backup comic here, a story there, and they were all just amazing. And this reminds me of those days. And let's crack this shit open. Covers by, the interior artist, Carlos D'Anta and Richard Friend, the inker. They do the cover as well. So, basically, we see these characters, the Bush robots, and through their dialogue, we find out that this is the end of the universe. This is a millennium in the future, whatever the word is. And there's basically no energy left in the universe. Almost every sentient creature is dead. All organic material has died long ago. It's so, entropy has taken over so much that even the molecules cease to vibrate, cease to cohere. And the last few Bush robots are dying out. And we realize that they're talking to someone. We can see the edge of his cape here. And of course, it's Majestic. And Majestic's very old now. He's gray. He's got a beard. He's been living forever, you know. And the Bush robots say, "Save yourself." They're dying. They're dead. So he's basically very fatalistic. So that's that then. And strictly speaking, the Bush robots of Vondar were a digitized echo of mortal life. Organic life, he says, dies a millennia ago. So I don't know if that's a real word or if he made it up. Instead of millennia, it's a millennia. I imagine it is. But he's, over the past little while, he's grown attached to them. He's been checking in on them because they're like the last race of creatures left in the whole universe. Because Majestic has Superman-like powers. He can, like, kind of zip around and check out everything, you know? He's pretty much omnipotent. So he flies off and goes back to his residence. And this is where he's been hanging out, waiting out the end of the world. It's called The Place. They didn't even bother to think up a good name for it. And within the place, there's basically, with Majestic, there's 9 sentient creatures left in the universe. And we're about to meet them. And the first one we see here is Aptomaxer. He's a superhero from another cosmos. And within his bloodstream, though, is a hyper-intelligent strain of syphilis that calls itself Cymberline. So that's the third living creature. It's actually a strain of syphilis. And because all life is sacred now, you know, they treasure it, you know. It's like, well, he's alive. That's something in this dying universe. So here we meet the other guys. We meet Gemeth, the enlightened engine. It seems to be some kind of AI computer. We meet the red god Jijimotu, this guy. Lord Math, abstract spirit of arithmetic itself. Kind of looks like this chess head. And the demonic Duke Dantalion. And it's that guy, those guys with the screaming heads. Also with them is the wandering Jew, Manny Weiss. And Lady Ukrastia, a vampire. So this is all that remains of everyone in the universe. All the other guides have died out, all the other vampires, even though they're supposed to be eternal and undying. But even they have died out except for these ones. All the demons are dead in hell, I guess, except for this guy. And even abstract concepts have died out except for this guy who's the spirit of it. So he's still a sentient creature. And, you know, they're basically chatting about how, yeah, it's just getting worse and worse out there. Stars are flickering out. Speed and temperature are reduced to 0. And the computer guy, he says, we don't have long. My task of decrypting the 9 billion possible names of God nears completion. Only a few thousand names remain. When the last name is pronounced, the universe ceases. At best, we have 3 sleep intervals remaining. So they don't have long. So they kind of, you know, talk to each other about what they should do. The demon says we stay and freeze or flee and freeze. And so I'm going to stay. They all kind of take a vote. And most of them agreed, decide to just stay. And just, you know, live out their last days in comfort and watch the universe die. But Majestic doesn't want to do that, and neither does Ukrastia the vampire. And Manny Weiss, the wandering Jew, also agrees, because, you know, that's what he does is wander. It's kind of in his blood. And he decides to go. And then the night before they leave, or the sleep interval before they leave, apparently, she made a deal with Optimax, or whatever his name was, Aptimaxer. And she slept with him so that the living syphilis could go into her blood. Because I guess they hope that they might be able to continue on a little longer, continue living. So there's 4 of them, even though we only see 3, and they fly off. And they say goodbye to their companions. So they're just flying through this void. I mean, there's no light, no energy left. It's just utter blackness. But he uses his X-ray vision, his hypervision, which is like, you know, Superman's X-ray vision. They see all these amazing things, phenomena that's never been seen before, because it's the end of the universe, so things are changing. And so they see a Dyson sphere, which I think is a theoretical astronomical term. And it's basically it's demolished planets. Its diameter is wide as the planetary orbit with the sun at its center. So Alan Moore like stuffs all of his scientific, you know, he likes to read science journals, and he's always like filling his comics with that kind of stuff, like really interesting sci-fi concepts, you know. And Majestic gets this radio beacon, you know. He's like, oh, maybe there's some people there. And so that gives him some hope. And he realizes also it must have a power source. So he does find it. And even though all the longest-lived isotopes expired long ago, there is some heavy metal there, which has some radioactivity, i.e. power. So Majestic builds a spaceship out of it. The vampire says, what a noble chariot you fashioned for us. And he says, more like a barge. Because, you know, it is just, they know they're all going to die pretty soon. But they just don't want to lay down and die. So, they're flying through the universe, seeing other crazy things. They see black holes that have healed up into colossal scabs of lightless baryonic matter. We see, monstrous gaseous nebulae contracted by cold to snowballs barely larger than a solar system. Just all this crazy stuff because the universe is dying. That night, or I don't know, soon after, Majestic is keeping the vampire alive by letting her suck his blood. And so He's got silberline in his blood now too, the syphilis. And they find this place. It's like a shoal of icebergs. And there's like gas bubbles under pressure in the contracting ice. And it makes superheat. And so they briefly phosphoresce. So it's kind of beautiful. And Manny decides to just give up. He says, this is where I want to die. This is kind of pretty and a pleasant place. And Majestic asks him, like, you want to spend your last, day in a cold place of meaningless lights? And Manny says, so what's not to like? So he's made his decision. He's happy. And he leaves him some of the fuel rod so he can have some warmth and light for his last hours. They find a planetary graveyard. And it's like it's a gigantic mausoleum. And all these dead worlds were sculpted. I guess these alien angels sculpted these like caskets for these planets. They're almost like art pieces. Instead of just having a dead planet, they built like a mausoleum around them. And all the inscriptions have long since eroded, though, wiped clean by photon winds. And this shows how long time has gone on for and how long these people have lived. He remembers that him and Manny actually spent several thousand years on Manny's homeworld. Although neither of us could recall its name. It began with an E. So they can't even remember the name of Earth. Earth is so long gone, and they've lived so long. Even though the wandering Jew, was born on Earth and lived there for thousands of years, he can't even remember the name of it because he's probably lived on a billion worlds since then. And the vampire asks Majestic if something's wrong. He's kind of mopey. He's asking himself if, as a warrior, all I've done is spent my life fighting for some goal. But now that the universe is dying, it's just like, what was the point of all that? There was no point. It was stupid. And the vampire says, and what of love? And Majestic's like, I never had that. I was too busy fighting all the time. And she says, love is not struggling towards a goal, towards a point. Love is the point. And for the first time in his long, long life, Majestic has a night of love with the Eucharistia. And it's really just such a sad moment. I mean, they're making love, and it's just the whole universe is dying around them and is ending. And it says, both of us are weeping as we reach our climax, not from joy nor sorrow wholly, but from something deeper neither man nor woman ever named. And in the endless dark, love flickers for a moment, and it's gone. So, they're hanging out, and, I forgot to mention, too, I like this, because she's biting his throat while they fuck, and he says, we penetrate each other. But afterwards, Cymberline is kind of like whispering in his head. He's got a strange voice like a liquid xylophone. And on the last day of all creation, the alien fuel rod is spent. Majestic can't even replenish his blood cells fast enough to feed the vampire. So she knows she's not long for this. Well, no one's long. The universe is not long for the universe. She says, but she's kind of content. She said, just hold me. It would be bliss to die against a living breast where beat a heart that knew me. And, but then all of a sudden, totally unexpectedly, this shouldn't be there, these golden tendrils come out of the blackness, and they attack the ship. There's something glowing thing at the center. And these tendrils, they totally dissolve the ship in instants. Molecule by molecule, they break it down. Just completely annihilate it. And she gets captured by the tendrils. And they yank her down before Majestic can fight back. They've already killed her. So in a rage, he just uses his whatever heat vision and just starts cutting through the swath of tendrils, which instantly re-knit behind him, so there's no way to go but in. So he goes deeper and deeper into this. And when he gets to the center, he sees this godlike personage. And the tendrils were his hair. And he says, "Hello, Majestic. How long has it been?" It seems like he knows Majestic. So we realize that this guy is, if you're familiar with the Wildstorm universe, this is Spartan. He was the sentient robot in Wildcats. And these guys sometimes fought together. Sometimes Majestic would help out the Wildcats. But through all this time, he evolved into this super AI godlike creature. And he basically says, "Don't fight this. Just join me. You know, join my consciousness," basically. And he's kind of like this being of pure thought now within Spartan's AI. So he informs him that when total entropy occurs, the universe will reach absolute zero. But what that'll mean is the rest of the universe will be superconductive. And that's what happens when things reach absolute zero, apparently. And so even a single thought could spark, you know, some universal conflagration of something. And it could set the universe ablaze, he says. And so at absolute zero, our mind will be the most important thing, because it's just any thought you have could spark this. And so he tells them, "Let us hush our very thoughts until we're sure we have the right thought." Because if you think a bad thought, then the whole universe will turn into that, I guess. So they get down to absolute zero. And right then, Majestic just thinks to himself, they really should be light. And there it is, the birth of a new universe, just like when God said, "Let there be light." But, you know, Majestic says it in a much more conversational tone. He's just thinking to himself. So there really should be light, and lo, there is. And the evening and the morning are the first day. The end. So this is definitely different than most Wildstorm comics of the time from Image. Because Alan Moore does that. He takes a normal superhero and then just totally spins it off into some crazy concepts and ideas. So that's it for Wildstorm Spotlight #1. Another great Alan Moore comic. At the Petixonian Institute, we do have a whole shelf dedicated to almost all of Alan Moore's works. We have almost everything. Every graphic novel and comic book. Just missing a few. And actually, some of them we don't want. Like Spawn versus Badrock, if that's a real comic. Some things we have acquired and then, you know, weren't worthy of the Petixonian Institute, so we got rid of them. But this one definitely is. This is some great Alan Moore, and you can definitely find this in a $1 box. I think this is kind of a forgotten gem. I never seen anyone review this or talk about it. It's kind of a forgotten Alan Moore thing. So that's it, and I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you next time.